was a very interesting movie. I would like to come at the film from a different angle, which is that I think that there are two ways to enjoy visual art. One way, I think, is how we have been increasingly programmed to come to visual art, which is as something that you consume. And then when you walk out of a movie theater, you might also actually just forget the name of the movie you watched because it was something you just watched passively. And there was really no reason, then it's like, let's go to dinner. And your life changes, you go somewhere else. It makes little impact on you. And I think a lot of our visual culture is essentially for passive consumption. Yeah. But then there's art, which is entirely about getting into your head and disturbing you greatly. And then when you leave the movie theater, you cannot not talk to somebody for hours and hours. And I think The Wire is actually a little bit like that. I think it is seductive and it is pleasurable and it's beautifully shot, but there's an obligation to talk about every single thing that happens in it. And then that's a different kind of art. So there's passive consumption where stereotypes have, I think, their most dangerous effect. And then there's active consumption where stereotypes are always going to be slightly disabled by our involvement with the reproduction of the stereotype in conversation. And I thought Precious, obviously, is an active film. You actively consume it. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is, I think films like that should come with a different kind of, rating. Like R, PG-13. There should be a sort of AR rating, for anti-racist people, or people who are prepared to watch it. Right. Who have understood the parameters of the cultural literacy problem with bodies of the poor, and in this case, the black poor. People need to be aware of the economics of the world. Yeah. So for instance, this is the kind of art, this is what I found so, I think, forward-moving in Sapphire's project, in the film as well, and with a lot of art. How do you make art about people for whom there's no future? And I think that, to me, is the centerpiece here. It's not people who have too much past. The way we read this movie is, if you don't have a good sense of anti-racism, you may read a movie like Precious and say that there's too much slavery here. There's too much past. It reeks of people who have been unable to walk out of a past which was too pernicious. But I think the real question, if you're an anti-racist, is how do you create art for people where the future is questionable? And in fact, if American capitalism has reached the point where millions of people are no longer needed, how do you produce art for that sense of dislocation? So when you say that, in The Wire, there's characters who are either corruptible or corrupted, in a sense, they are also people who are negotiating utter disposability. Right. And, there's no question of, being positive. Where is positivity? And I think that's how I would approach at least these art forms, as questions of futurelessness, and therefore, the viewer has to be extremely aware of some of these dynamics. Because I think if you try to watch things like Precious or The Wire passively, I think then you fall in all the traps that Ishmael Reed talks about. But I think if you have even some awareness or understanding, if you are able to represent the AR rating, then I think you will have a profound sense of doubt and worry in your head. And art should create doubt, worry, anxiety, dislocation. Art should not be entirely pleasure. Pleasure should come from dislocation as well, not from sort of masturbation. And I think we expect culture to masturbate. And it shouldn't. It must not.
I recall in your book,